Have you ever done everything right for weeks, and then on one bad stretch convince yourself that it was absolutely all pointless? We can be over dramatic, can't we? 2 months into eating and working out exactly the way I wanted to, I came across this one bad stretch that really made me want to disappear. And I had kept my workouts and my nutrition on point for several months. Then this rough patch of stress hit, I guess, and then I slipped a few times. And so it wasn't anything catastrophic. Maybe some food choices wasn't proud of, maybe a few workout sessions that I missed. But that guilt, oh my gosh, that guilt, it showed up afterwards, and it wasn't. I think it was more way out of proportion than it really needed to be than what had actually happened. And I felt like I had let myself down completely. So today I want to talk about what guilt actually did to me and why I find it more dangerous than the actual slip itself. Before we get into all this great stuff, hey, if you've ever had a setback of some sort, none of us have, right? Just me. If you ever had a setback, try to talk you out of things. Let's help you get back on track. Head over to talktoperry.com. I'm going to drop that in the lower third there. If you're watching on video, and for the audio, it's just talktoperry.com, Perry. Let's talk about breaking that cycle. All right, so the thoughts that showed up here, they were brutal, and I'm like at this point, like, what's the use of moving forward? The last one I thought was really dangerous when I got to that wording of what's the point in moving forward, because at that time it felt like relief. Like I'd finally settled down, there was this burden that I had been carrying, and it was like, you know what? What's the use? Why even go forward? I can let that go. I don't have to work out anymore. I don't have to, all these things. And I had I let it get bad enough that I nearly went into hiding. And it wasn't like disappearing, but it was just pulling back, avoiding people that I had been accountable to, instead of just admitting, hey, I had a rough week. So maybe this was over dramatic. Maybe you've never done this, but just a couple of missed workouts and some bad meals. And I had such a momentum, such a streak going. And I was like, man, I don't think I'm capable of continuing on. But here's what I eventually figured out. The slip itself, going off track with the eating, missing some workouts, stuff like that, and that wasn't the problem. Having all these good choices and these healthy choices of a goal that I was going after, adding those up, that does not get erased by just a few bad days. And there's a lot of people I've talked to out there that will let a little string of like an off week or something like that turn into an off year or off 2 years. So what the dangerous part was just taking this leap of saying, well, I made some bad choices. What's the use? And then give in to all the wins that I had stacked up. Have you ever had that happen? I mean, I'm not even talking about workouts where just you've had a lot of wins in your life, a lot of accomplishments, you've done a lot of things, but then you go through this kind of tough season, and then you look at everything as if there was nothing ever accomplished. That's what I was looking at. And, I'm thinking, gosh, this couple different ideas here. One thing is just like, hey, this is just a few days. The other thing was just about this verdict of an entire identity of myself. That was not true. And it didn't matter how much I was trying to convince myself, I was believing it was true. Guilt has a sneaky way of dressing itself up as accountability. And we do this in a lot of areas of life. It can feel like you're taking your slip seriously, like, oh my gosh, I totally messed up. And we treat it as punishment. But just punishment. I mean, that can be dressed up even as responsibility. Punishment rarely gets anybody back on track. It just makes hiding feel like the safer option. So what actually got me back going again was just separating those two out. Now, sometimes I'll do a little bubble sheet where I'll put in, kind of like what's the situation, all the negative feelings around it, and I'll do the same thing where I'll put the situation in the middle and what are all the things, the ideal things that I'm wanting to accomplish. And then I can burn up the other one and say that this isn't true. Sometimes I'll do that little sheet and then I'll just cross out the ones that aren't true. All just the thoughts, the feelings, the ideas that are around that idea. So, and I'm like, oh God, I'm putting a story on this stuff. The slip itself, I never let it spiral into something bigger. Well, I was at the time, but I'm like, hey, I've got to nip this in the bud, because a bad week, and just call it what it is. It was just a bad week. It was just an off week. It just wasn't the idea. I actually was starting to use that as proof of that's where I don't want to go. Where do I want to go? Because a lot of times people will have that bad week and let it spiral and spiral. Easy for me to say. But you get to choose the story that you tell about it. That's the big part of it. So if you can nip that in the bud and just kind of say, you know what, where do I really want to go and feel with this? Yeah, a bad play happened. You think of sports, people, trained athletes that have done amazing things over the years, people that have gone into the Olympics, and they just have an off day. They've got to mentally flip that switch for the next event, the next game, the next time. Same thing in business, same thing in workouts. So take a look at that and say, you know what, which one do I want to go on? I know, I get it. Sometimes those dark clouds can feel like a heavy storm, but it's like, hey, I know this storm will pass. I'm going toward my goal. You've got this, my friend. I'd love to hear your top takeaway from today. And if you've got a situation where you've gotten through that, where you didn't let the guilt stuff spiral you down into quitting, or even if you did, drop those down in the comments. I promise I will reply. You absolutely rock, my friend. And as always, remember, it's never too late. We'll see you next week. That's another Power Blast podcast in the books. Thanks so much for tuning in. And remember, when you are ready to recharge your battery, make sure you go to talktoperry.com. That's talktoperry.com. That's Perry. And I want to listen. I want to hear, what's going on. I want to help you in that 15-minute call to recharge your battery and reclaim your power so that you're off and running and creating massive momentum toward your dream. Also, every day, I am delivering more motivation, support, tips, and strategies inside my free community with amazing people like yourself. And we are conquering the mindset and the fitness. I do 52 weeks of free training in there. Plus, I coach and I mentor people, as well as give you access to tons of resources and guides. It's called my Upside Down Fitness Community because we work on a lot of mindset stuff, the inside stuff. And we're a fun group of people striving to make healthier habits in this awesome chapter of life. So make sure you get in there. I promise you'll absolutely love it. Just head over to upsidedownfit.com and you can get into the group. And hey, you would be an awesome friend if you get over to iTunes or wherever you listen to your podcast and leave an honest rating and review for the Power Blast podcast. It helps awesome people like you find the show even faster, and that's who I'm looking for, awesome people like you. That's all I have for this week, my friend, and just to let you know, you absolutely rock. That's all I have for this week. I'll see you on the next Power Blast podcast, and always remember, it's never too late. We'll see you next week.